What's going on YouTube? It's Teej back again with another video, and happy Friday to you. Today I bring you my AFC quarterback tier ranking. Excited to bring it your way. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new to the channel and like what you see today. And of course, most important thing you can do, leave me your quarterback tier rankings down below. How many fall into the elite tier here in the AFC? How many are really good with sprinkles of elite? How many need a good supporting cast so you'd put in the good tier? And then what do you think about some of the young and unproven names here in today's video? Love to hear your thoughts and expectations. And like I said in yesterday's video, which by the way, yesterday I did the NFC. If you're just seeing this one, missed yesterday's, definitely check out the NFC side of this video. I'm going to bring those names back into the fold here at the very end so you can see my entire 32 team outlook for the quarterback position and who falls under what tier. But additionally, I also wanted to note that I will do one more version of this video basically towards the end of the offseason, right before week 1. Once we have all the week 1 starters, I will list 1 through 32, the top week 1 starters. And also one more caveat before we get started, or one more question / request really. I do already plan on doing a couple more tier rankings, best offense, best defense. If you want to see sub-categorized versions of those videos, basically like best wide receiver room, best run game, best pass rush, best secondary, things along those lines, let me hear it down below in the comments section. I'd be happy to make them. And if enough people request them, I'd be happy to produce them. So let's go ahead and kick things off with Josh Allen here to start with the AFC side. He's obviously going in the elite tier. I'm a big Josh Allen fan. I feel like I'm the president of the Josh Allen fan club. #1 player on my 2018 draft board. And yes, over the last couple of years, and specifically last year, turnovers caught up with him, but his ability to potentially win a game with the Bills on his back it's Mahomes-like, right? It's Burrow-ish. Now, he's not going to be the #1 quarterback here on this list, like he might have been, in my opinion, a year ago, just because those turnovers have caught up. But he is certainly elite, both with his arm strength, the accuracy. It's touch and go, but when it's on, it's definitely there. Plus the rushing ability, and he is just so hard to bring down in the open field. So yeah, Josh Allen, easily one of those elite names, accompanied by Joe Burrow, who I will have edge out Josh Allen. And as you can tell, I'm going to go ahead and rank these as we go along, so you will legitimately get my AFC quarterback rankings as well as my tier ranking for all these guys. But Burrow is Josh Allen minus the turnover-prone nature, and he's just got a little bit more of that it factor. It's so hard to quantify, but if you were to tell me 2-minute drive to win the Super Bowl, I'm a big Josh Allen guy, but I'll take Joe Burrow. He's just got ice in his veins, and he comes up in those big moments. And again, over a larger sample size, a little less turnover-prone as Josh Allen. You do lose a little bit of mobility, but I think both these guys are freaks, and they're, hey, you're going to see at the very end of the video, 2 of the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL, in my opinion. But anyways, let's move on now to Justin Herbert, who is continuing a trend here. He's going to the elites here. I'm a big Justin Herbert fan. I think he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league last year, and I think he's only going to get better. Young and upcoming guy going into year 4. They add one more pass catcher to the mix with Quentin Johnston as a first rounder. I love the rushing upside that he plays with. Has one of, maybe you could tell me on the argument that he has the best arm, at least from an arm strength perspective, just throwing it on a rope and letting it get somewhere in the blink of an eye. Great accuracy. Has a combination of being able to throw fastballs, but also great touch. I mean, there's not much in Justin Herbert's game that you want to nitpick with. Now, I'd love to see him take another step forward, get into that MVP conversation, maybe win an MVP here next year, the year after, whatever. But the Chargers are going to pay him for a good reason, because he is an elite quarterback, and that's where your franchise really starts to differentiate itself. Then we get to Jimmy Garoppolo, and yeah, it's actually kind of weird seeing Jimmy Garoppolo in this video. I'm going to put him, I'm going back and forth between average or good but needs good supporting cast. Yeah, I'll put him in average starter. I think that's about right. Especially when you take into account that, when was the last time we saw Jimmy Garoppolo start 17 games? So maybe when he's on the field, you could still win an argument that he's good but needs that good supporting cast, because that's basically what he had in San Francisco. Yes, sure. But also, he's going to miss time. So let's go ahead and knock him down at the average tier, average starter tier. And plus, he's only getting older. Do I think he'll look better than that Josh McDaniels offense than Derek Carr? Yeah, sure. So maybe he does play better than what they had with Carr last year. But to me, Jimmy Garoppolo is as middle of the road, average, kind of give him a good offense and he'll be fine. Put him in a bad situation and he will show it. He's almost like the true indicator of how good your scheme and the supporting cast is. There's a couple running backs throughout my lifetime, none's really coming to mind. Marion Barber, Felix Jones, even kind of those mid-2000s Cowboys running backs where it's if you had a good offensive line, they'd put up solid numbers. If you have a bad offensive line, they're going to show it, and I almost kind of feel like Jimmy Garoppolo is that at the quarterback position. I digress. We get to Lamar Jackson, potentially unpopular opinion here, but I'll put him in the elites here. I'm still a huge Lamar Jackson fan, which kills me to say as a Steelers fan, but nevertheless, when he's healthy, he is a guy that won us, a unanimous MVP in 2019, right? Freaky with the ball in his hand, and I think year over year has grown as a passer. The unfortunate part of that is he's just missed time, so I feel like I'm the only one seeing it, or not enough people are seeing it because he's missing X amount of games this year, then he's missing this much in the next season, So I think if we can get full 17, we'll see that progression for him as a passer, especially the change in the scheme. As long as he learns that new playbook, I think it will open up more throws for him. Plus the add OBJ, the draft Zay Flowers. I think he's got more weapons in the passing game for him to work with. So I'm still a big Lamar Jackson believer, and I think it's warranted that he got the contract that he did from Baltimore. Then we get to Will Levis, obviously young and unproven, my quarterback 2 from last year's QB class or this past NFL draft. So I like Levis a lot, and we've seen some clips of him in rookie mini camps or whatever, looking okay, but it's rookies on rookies. I'm not really buying too much stake into that, but we'll see where Levis goes. But I do think he could be that long-term answer in Tennessee. But I don't even know if we'll really see him a whole lot here this upcoming year. It depends on how Tannehill plays. I think he's got the opportunity to kind of stave him off. Then we get to Mac Jones, and I'll put him just ahead of Jimmy Garoppolo. I think if you were to ask me right now which of these guys I'd rather have starting a season for me, I think I'll take Mac Jones in a rookie contract over Jimmy Garoppolo. Also, part of that is Mac Jones coming off a lost year with Matt Patricia, so it felt like we didn't get to see him take a step forward. Jimmy Garoppolo, I know what he is. So, I think there's a little bit more maybe potential in the tank for Mac Jones versus Jimmy Garoppolo. Again, I know what Jimmy Garoppolo is, and also I know he's going to miss time at some point in the season. Mac Jones, maybe we have better odds of him being able to last the entire year. So I'll put Mac Jones just ahead of Jimmy Garoppolo, but you could sell me on that one going either way. A lot of these guys, it's more so about the tier versus the actual individual ranking. Patrick Mahomes is the next quarterback. I won't talk too long on this one. He's the best quarterback in the league, right? 2 Super Bowls over the last 3 years. Also has an MVP before he turns 25. Super Bowl MVPs. I mean, yeah. The guy's a freak. We've seen him overcome huge deficits. We've seen him bury teams as they get out in front early on. We've seen him, take down some of the best teams, the best opponents in a given year, and we've also seen him embarrass some of the worst teams. Like, name a situation we've seen Patrick Mahomes do it. And honestly, I'd make the argument that he's the most talented guy that's ever played the position. Now, it's hard to say that. He's not even 30 yet. I'm not saying he's better than Tom Brady. Brady beat him in the Super Bowl. Brady's the GOAT. I'm not going to go Max Kellerman to call him the BOAT because that was whack. But where I used to think Rodgers was the most talented and the best pure player of the position of all time, I think Patrick Mahomes has overtaken that. I think there's more mobility, has more just insane backyard big play potential. But even Rodgers in his prime, man, that guy was surgical. So you could sell me going back in that direction. But I do think ultimately Patrick Mahomes, potentially unpopular opinion, is the most talented quarterback we've seen play of all time. Not saying he's better than Brady. He's not saying he's the GOAT. I just think he's the most talented guy that's ever done it. Not going to include Matt Ryan. He's actually the next guy that pops up here. He's going to be in the broadcast booth, which I'm excited about seeing. Then we get to Davis Mills, backup. Yeah, Davis Mills is a backup, and he should be at this point. I don't think he's been as bad as some people thought he would be as a third rounder out of Stanford. I know he did not have a whole lot of draft love by most people who follow the NFL draft. He was a third rounder for a reason, but I think he was, I could see an argument where, Davis Mills is like quarterback 32 in the NFL at a given time. That or he is one of your better backup options because he's QB 33 to 38 or whatever. And if you get in a pinch, need someone to start for 3 or 4 games, he can keep the ship afloat, which is really, that's the mark of a good backup. If you can start 3, 4, 5 games and make sure things don't run a mess, you're a good backup. And I think Davis Mills actually could be that. So he'll be at the top end of the backups here. We'll have one more guy joining him, and weird it is to say draft in the same draft class. I think I'd almost rather have Davis Mills as a backup. But anyways, next is Kenny Pickett. I'll put Pickett just behind Garoppolo. Noted, not a huge Kenny Pickett guy. He was QB4 for me in the 2022 class, but he does play for my favorite team. And I will say, bias aside, I think he showed me more than I anticipated seeing right away. He was able to get the football out quick, which was something I was really concerned about with him coming out of Pitt, that time to throw. I think he cleaned that up a ton. And he's very, kind of sneaky quick. He's got sneaky scoots. And, solid accuracy. Haven't seen the fumble issue and the small hands become something that lingers. Good accuracy. And I think he's a guy that I feel comfortable running an offense to. As like a true signal caller, feel comfortable with him at the line of scrimmage and commanding a huddle. So I'll put him just behind Garoppolo just because Yeah, the consistency of Garoppolo, yeah, I don't know. You could still be in this going either way, but I'll put Garoppolo, give him the veteran nod here over Kenny Pickett, but maybe I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. Mac Jones, I will say, came from a much better QB class, so him being QB5 versus Pickett QB1 in 2022, I don't think makes really a difference there, if anybody's wondering. Then we get to Anthony Richardson, obviously young and unproven, and we'll have one more guy who falls in this tier who plays in the same division. Really excited to see what Anthony Richardson looks like. I think he could be... he's a nice Rookie of the Year bet. When I saw markets first opened up, he was like number 5. Obviously, Bijan's first. But Anthony Richardson was like plus 900. And I was like, that's the bet to make. Because, you don't want the shortest odds for, a bet that you're going to have to wait 10 months to get and see if it hits. So Anthony Richardson plus 900, a guy who's going to score a lot of touchdowns, passing production, rushing production. I think he'll be really productive. And because of that, he's going to become a really nice starting option in fantasy as well. I think Shane Steichen's going to have that offense pretty well catered to him sooner rather than later. I do hope ultimately that he is the week 1 starter just because he's a guy that has not played enough football, and the only way to fix that is by getting him on the field and letting him play football. I know they got Gardner Minshew, but let me see Anthony Richardson sooner rather than later. Aaron Rodgers, I'll put him in the elite tier just ahead of Lamar Jackson. Look, I know Rodgers is coming off a weaker season, but he was dealing with 2 rookies at wide receiver. An offensive line still had injuries, and really they leaned on Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon as receivers as much as any other offense in the league. Robert Tonyan's nothing special at tight end. I think the situation I don't want to call it dire, but it's about as close as it could possibly be. And if not for the emergence of Christian Watson down the stretch, I don't think this team sniffs playoff competition. So I think Rodgers had to do a lot with little, and ultimately didn't do enough because they missed the playoffs. But now he's going to a Jets team where he's got players with chemistry already, Alan Lazard and whatnot, players that he's familiar with, but also Garrett Wilson, who automatically would have been the best wide receiver on the Packers roster last year. And a great scheme, obviously familiarity with Nathaniel Hackett. Hopefully that allows him to hit the ground running. Love the backfield. The offensive line has some question marks, but I think it has enough depth to keep the ship afloat. And also a great defense on their side, just like he did in Green Bay, but the Jets defense might be the best in the league. Like, you could sell me on that argument. So really excited to see what Rodgers looks like in the Big Apple. Now, it'll be interesting to see how he handles that pressure, because he is not necessarily the guy who has had the most friendly of media relations, maybe is the way to phrase this. But I'm excited to see how he deals with all the pressure that comes with playing in New York. Then we get to Russell Wilson. Man, this one is tough. I potentially hot take. I really pondered putting him in the below average starter tier. I really did. I'll put him in average, assuming Sean Payton gets a little bit more out of him, but really no guarantee. So if you're telling me that he should be the lone guy in the below average tier, you're not going to get any arguments from me, because honestly, I think last year Hackett was an issue, but Russell Wilson was as big of a problem. I don't think Sean Payton coming into town is going to just all of a sudden everything's back on track for Russell Wilson. I think he's regressed. I think he just caught up, and he's lost a little bit of arm strength. Teams play a whole lot more too high coverage, so they're taking away those deep moon balls down the sideline that he used to be able to chuck up against single high coverage. I think the game's changed, and it's affected Russell Wilson's game. Plus, he's lost a little bit of mobility with age and just time catching up with him. Again, I'd be fine with putting him in the below average tier if that's where you think he goes. I'll put him at the bottom of the average tier, though. Maybe Sean Payton gets a little bit more out of him. And he did look a little bit better week 17, week 18. So maybe. But yeah, my hopes are not set too high for Russell Wilson. Next name is CJ Stroud. I'll follow my quarterback rankings here. Levis was my 2A, Stroud was my 2B, and Anthony Richardson was my 4. I liked all 4 of these, top tier quarterbacks. Bryce Young was my 1, and then these other guys, which I've already said in order. I liked all 4 of them. Thought all 4 should go in the first round. Levis did not. So, following the draft order, he should probably be the guy at the end of this ranking. But all 3 of these guys are young and unproven, so we really don't know what they are. All we have to go on is what they did in college, what we thought of them as prospects, and I have them in the order in which I thought they were prospect-wise. So, change up the order. I don't really care. Production-wise, Anthony Richardson should probably be at the top of this, because I think he's going to put up some pretty big numbers, and we might not even see Will Levis to start this year, which leads me perfectly into Ryan Tannehill. I'll put him at the top of the average starter tier. And the more I think about it, I'm going to put Pickett just ahead of Jimmy Garoppolo. So last minute change there. I'll put Pickett ahead of Garoppolo. Goes upside, young guy. I'll take the young guy. But Tannehill is still a solid football player. And I think about that Thursday night game against the Packers. Was it Thursday? It was a primetime game. I think it was Thursday night against Green Bay, where Tannehill was out here slinging it. And in a big game where Tennessee was trying to keep their playoff hopes alive, and here's a big reason they, kind of fought to live another week. Ultimately, the Titans missed the playoffs, and it's going to be really interesting to see what he does with a wide receiver room that's headlined by Treylon Burks and then Kyle Phillips, I guess, out of the slot. Westbrook Akina, the other outside guy. He's got a rough wide receiver room to work with, but they do have a good run game. They've addressed the offensive line, and Mike Vrabel finds a way to raise the floor of his teams, what makes him one of the best NFL head coaches, right? But yeah, Tannehill, I think, is going to have a rough situation. But I almost, because of that, hope they just coast him out as opposed to inserting Will Levis and hoping he raises that, because I think it's a bad enough situation, skill position-wise on the offensive end, outside of Derrick Henry in that run game, to where I'd just rather Ryan Tannehill eat those lumps versus Will Levis potentially gain bad habits, get a little shaky and gain, again, bad habits that linger with him for years to come. So I'd almost just rather see Ryan Tannehill start every game this year for Tennessee. Then we get Trevor Lawrence. I'll go with really good sprinkles of elite. I think Lawrence gets even better this year in year 3. But, back half of last year, we saw him play like a guy that should have been the number 1 overall pick, which was awesome because rookie year, it was squandered by Urban Meyer. And honestly, it felt like the first half of last year was almost his true year 1. And again, midway through the year, he really kicked it into high gear. And I think he's only going to get that much better with Calvin Ridley in the mix. Hopefully they do sign Evan Ingram long term. You pair him up with another rookie tight end. I think that offense starts to take more of an image of Doug Peterson, who I think is a great offense coordinator, will get guys open, and will cause a lot of mismatches on the defensive side with 2 tight end sets. Now he's got 3 wide receivers that he can lean on pretty heavily. Add Tank Bigsby. Now it feels like the running game has a little bit more to it. So I think the situation around Trevor Lawrence is only getting better, while he himself is only getting better. So yeah, I think I think I can make the argument that he goes in this really good tier. But we have one other guy that we're going to talk about in that tier, not too far away, which is a little trickier. Tua Tagovailoa, good, but needs a good supporting cast. I mean, we didn't see Tua really piece it together until he got Tyreek Hill, another year of Jalen Waddle, Mike McDaniel to come over and cater an offense specifically made with Tua Tagovailoa in mind. So yeah, I think and a lot of people have comped him to left-handed Jimmy Garoppolo. So, if we're talking about prime Jimmy Garoppolo, definitely I would put Jimmy G in this good, but needs good supporting cast around him. But taking into account the injuries, Garoppolo's down a tier, and also he's a little bit older than Tua. Not little bit. He is older than Tua Tagovailoa at this point. So I'll put Tua a tier ahead of him. Him versus Tannehill, if you ask me who would I want to start a franchise with right now, give me what I think Tua can be versus what I know Tannehill's going to be, plus younger guy. Hopefully there's more upward projection versus Tannehill probably headed towards the decline. So that maybe that sells my argument a little bit more there. But that one could go either way. Then we get to Deshaun Watson. I'll put Watson behind Trevor Lawrence. But look, he wasn't great last year when we got to see him in Cleveland. But before all the off-the-field stuff, his last year in Houston, he played like an elite quarterback. Now, was that a guy putting up elite numbers on a 4-win Houston Texans team? Maybe. But even before that, when they were in that playoff conversation, he was damn good. And I think back to his rookie year, his second year in Houston, so many people love Deshaun Watson. Now, obviously, for good reasons, that has changed because a lot of his off-the-field stuff is something that is important to me, and I have a hard time rooting for him, and that's why I'm almost glad it's Cleveland Brown because I'm a Steelers fan, and I'm not going to root for Deshaun Watson at that point. But, his, nasty human nature aside, the guy's a good football player. And, I think those 6 games last year are the outlier to the sample that we have so far in Deshaun Watson's career. Now, this year, if he goes and stinks it up in Cleveland, then yeah, he's gonna fall down this list hard. But ultimately, I do think he's going to get back to where he was in Houston versus what we saw last year. Or at least he'll play closer to what he was in Houston versus what he was last year. I think Cleveland's going to be a better team for it, as much as that hurts coming out of my mouth. But I'll put him behind Trevor Lawrence still all the same. And again, Deshaun Watson, Tua Tagovailoa, again, just focusing on the football player, I'll take Watson over Tua. All right, next we get Zach Wilson. Here's our other backup. Yeah, and it's crazy it is to say, I think I will take Davis Mills over Zach Wilson. There's probably more upside with Wilson, but at this point, I know the floor is way, way more rough. It got to the point where on a Thursday night game against the Jags, the Jets are trotting out a guy who's playing for the CFL like 2 weeks before that. It's not looking good for Zach Wilson. So I'll take Davis Mills over Wilson. Let me know what you guys think about that. And if you had to have one of these two guys as a backup, who would you take? Also, personality-wise, I think Mills would maybe mesh a little bit better with that role versus Zach Wilson. I don't know. Wilson also might just be dude man from Blue Mountain State, Alex Moran, essentially on a roster, which, okay, maybe there's some laughs to be had there. Anyways, poor jokes aside, that does it for my AFC version of the tier ranking. I'm going to take a quick pause, so I'm going to take 1 second for you. I'm going to add the NFC quarterbacks in. All right, now we are back adding in the NFC names. So you can see Jalen Hurts puts himself just ahead of Aaron Rodgers. I may regret that in a few months' time because Rodgers could turn back the clock, be right back in an MVP type of form, and maybe you flip these. And I'll put Hurts just ahead of Lamar, partially because of the injury concerns too, which I also think is potentially there for Aaron Rodgers. He gets there up there in age. So I'll put Hurts as, my quarterback 5 in the NFL. Wow, that is a huge rise from a guy that had to transfer out of Alabama. Then we get to the really good tier. I put Dak Prescott between Watson and Lawrence. And then we get to the good but not great tier. We only had one AFC quarterback. So where the AFC makes up, 6 of the 7 names in elite. They only had one guy in good, and then all the NFC guys are ahead of him. Kyler, Stafford, Kirk, Carr, and then Geno. So AFC, NFC, it feels like there's more top-end talent in the AFC, but more middle-of-the-road talent there on the NFC side of it. And then average starters, we insert Goff and Daniel Jones just behind Tannehill and Mac Jones, which, look, guys, average starters, you can sell me on any one of these guys being, QB 17, the other one being QB 18. Like, flip the order. Okay, yeah, sure. Again, the tier is more important than the actual individual ranking. If you think Daniel Jones is better than Mac Jones, fine. But year 3 versus just got the extension, I'll take the younger guy in Mac Jones. Pickett, Garoppolo, Wilson. And then we get to the young and unproven guys. And I still have Bryce Young leading the way. Justin Fields then right behind him. Then we have the other quarterbacks from this year's class. Then Jordan Love, again, further along. And, it took 3 years. Hopefully he takes that step forward. But versus a clean slate, I'll take the rookies with a clean slate. Purdy, Howell, Ritter, Purdy got the wins, and then TBD on Howell and Ritter. Hooker, obviously a rookie, and I think he'd be fine taking over for Goff long term. Lance, yikes. Corral, which if Corral wasn't in the young and unproven tier as a second-year guy, he'd probably be the second to last, maybe the last name right there with Taylor Heineke. Which, before we get to that, we then get to below-average starters. Dalton, Baker, and Trask. So the same 3 from the NFC side. And then we get Davis Mills, I think would be the best backup of these bunch. But honestly, again, you could sell me on this going any sort of direction. Zach Wilson, I think I'll take over Darnold. Again, younger, maybe there's more upside. And then Taylor Heineke. Again, like I said yesterday, I have seen enough Taylor Heineke starting football games. But that's going to do it. And that is a wrap for my entire quarterback tier ranking. So here is the entire list. There are the backups. We're going to take them out of picture now so you can see the elite guys once more. Let me hear your quarterback rankings down below for the AFC, but also overall. And how many QBs would you put in the elite tier? I'd be really curious to see your thoughts there, especially those fringe guys, Hurts, Rodgers, and Lamar. I feel like they're going to be the guys that a lot of people push back on and say they're not elite, they're in that really good tier. And if you feel that way, let me hear your case down below. But let me hear your thoughts on all the quarterbacks in the NFL. Who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Who's your favorite team? And where do you think your favorite team's quarterback should slot in at? But be sure to hit that like button if you guys enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and like what you saw today. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day and a good weekend at that. Until next time, my name is Teach, and I am signing off.